Hi, Miss Eglin here. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Giver, chapters 12, 13, and 14. The first question we have is, what is Jonas beginning to see at the top of chapter 12? And if you go back into the chapter, you'll see that Jonas, he has slept, he had a dream, and they're talking about Gabriel, and then he's sledding, and then he kind of goes to the annex with Fiona, and then she's saying, well, I waited for you, and basically he was later, and she's kind of wants him to explain why he was late, and he doesn't do that, and he's like, I apologize for making you wait. And then she goes into work, but as she's going, he sees something. So he goes into the annex, and the Giver, I'm on 91, says describe it, and he said something changed. So basically the same thing that happened with the faces in the audience and the same thing that happened with the apple. And then right here, the Giver gives him another memory, and then we find out, he says, look, I saw it in the sled. And then right here, the Giver goes, I'm right then. The Giver said, you're beginning to see the color red. Jonas says, the what? And he goes, how to explain this? Once, back in the time of the memories, everything had a shape and size the way things still do, but they also had a quality called color. So we come to find out that they removed color when they went to sameness. And it says when flesh was many different colors, that was before we went to sameness. Today flesh is the same, and what you saw was the red tones. Probably when you saw the faces take on color, it wasn't deep or vibrant as the apple as your friend's hair. So we now know that Fiona has red hair, and that's the different quality that Jonas was seeing was color. So the implications of this are huge because it means everybody else sees in black and white. Okay, and it says, how does the Giver help him? Well, he gives him a memory of a sled. So right now he's just seeing red. And the third question says, what happens to color in this community versus memory? Well, they got rid of it. And usually in class, we do an activity where I put colored pictures on the bulletin board and you write down associations with those colors. Because what do colors give us? They can trigger memories and they can make us feel different ways. So if you take away color, you're taking away those feelings and memories, and that's what the community has done. So the fourth question is really important because it says, what is Jonas's opinion of sameness? Well, here on the bottom of 95, he says, the Giver says, we gained control of many things, but we had to let go of others. And right away he goes, we shouldn't have. And the Giver's surprised. He's like, you've come to that conclusion very quickly. You know, it took me many years. And then at the end of the chapter, the Giver gives him a rainbow so that Jonas can see all the colors. Okay, and moving on to the journal activity. The prompt is, when the community went to sameness, many changes came with it. And the analysis is, how has the absence of color helped this society, harmed it? The absence of color helped the society go to sameness. They gained control of many things, but they lost the ability to be unique or to make choices. So they wouldn't have problems like racism, but you also wouldn't have, the ability to be different. Everybody had to be the same and look similar. So a quote that supports this is, our people made that choice. And this is from the Giver. The choice to go to sameness. We relinquished color when we relinquished sunshine and did away with differences. We gained control of many things, but we had to let go of others. And right away, Jonas is like, no, that's not right. Okay, and chapter 12, vocabulary, significant, something's important, dumbfounded, when you're like, what's going on? Shocked. Distinctive is something is different. A quality is unique. Relinquished is to let go with something. And Riley is to kind of have like a dry humor, which the giver does. Discipline wand, a small stick-like instrument used to strike a person who misbehaves. So we find out that's how they control the small children. And the old people. Occupational therapy would be promoting recovery or rehabilitation, so that's what they would do at the rehabilitation center. Seeing beyond, we now know the Jonas can see beyond because he sees the color red. One generation memories, and this is a recollection of personal experiences, and really this is all we have. We only know what we've experienced. And work the kinks out would be to fix a problem. So the scientist had a really tough time trying to get rid of the color red. And the giver says, the genetic scientists, the red hair must really, drive them crazy. Let's move on to chapter 13. And right here it says, what causes frustration for Jonas? Again, now that he's seen color, he really likes it, and he says to the giver, but I want them, Jonas says angrily. It isn't fair that nothing has color. And then the giver's like, not fair? Explain what you mean. And then he says, I want to decide things. I want to make choices. Even though it's not important, I want to pick. Jonas's first startling and disturbing memory from the giver is a very disturbing memory, and I'm gonna go down here, and it says the giver had chosen a startling and disturbing memory that day. Under the touch of his hands, Jonas had found himself suddenly in a place that was completely alien, hot and windswept under a vast blue sky. Basically, this is elephant poaching. People are killing elephants for their tusks. That's ivory. It's very valuable, and it's illegal because it kills the elephant. And then we have the very sad burial of another elephant, because elephants are the only animals that bury their dead. So he says now he saw another elephant emerge, broke some leafy branches with a snap and draped them over the mass of thick torn flesh. Finally, it tilted its massive head, raised its trunk, and roared into the empty landscape. Jonas had never heard such a sound. It was a sound of rage and grief, and it seemed to never end. So he's really getting this emotional pain of this horrible scene of poaching. And his reaction is to go home, and he sees his sister's quote-unquote imaginary comfort object, and he tries to say to Lily, did you know there were once really elephants, live ones? And she doesn't believe him. She says, right, sure, Jonas. And then he puts his hands on her and tries to give her the memory. And then she says, you're hurting me with your hand. And he goes, I apologize. And she goes, accept your apology. Lily responded indifferently, stroking the lifeless elephant. So this is the first time he's, trying to share with her, and she can't get it. And it says, is the giver married? Explain about his marriage relationship. Okay, so in chapter 13, we find out the giver was married. And, he says, my former spouse lives now with the childless adults. Okay, so the giver was able to get married, but he couldn't share any of the things with his spouse. He wasn't allowed to. And then it says, once their children grow up, they go to live with the childless adults. So it really doesn't seem like there was able to be much of a bond there. So, and he's telling Jonas, like, you can marry, but you're still going to be alone. And then we come really to 4 is a really important question. Why is a receiver necessary in the community? Well, we find out they need to make decisions that the other community members don't have the experience to make. So he goes back to when you become the official receiver, there's rules. And then he says, do you advise the committee of elders? And then he goes, rarely, like when they need you. Okay, then they talk about the old receiver, the previous one who failed. And then they had to get those memories, and the giver had to help them through it, but he said he really couldn't help them that much. And he's saying, your instructors know nothing. And then the giver goes, your instructors are well trained. Everyone is well trained, but without the memories, they don't really have any background knowledge. Okay? And so they know technical things, but they don't know what has happened in the past, and only the giver knows that, and that's why he's necessary. What does the giver wonder about when he's not with the giver, and why does the giver sometimes send him away? So, okay. So, Jonas, when he gets sent away, is looking for color, and he wondered what lay in the far distance where he had never gone. The land didn't end beyond those nearby communities. Where were there hills elsewhere? Were there vast wind-torn areas like the place he had seen in memory, the place where the elephant died? So he's starting to wonder where is elsewhere, what lays beyond. And then the giver is in pain. And then at the end of the chapter, he's going to get a memory, and we would assume it's going to be a painful memory. So the giver sends him away because he's in so much pain, he can't function. Okay, and what is the next slide here? Okay, so the journal activity. Jonas seems angry that people are not giving a choice, but the giver provides a reason. Okay, so when people make choices, the quote is, he might make wrong choices. What does the giver mean when he says, without the memories, it's all meaningless? The giver means that when you can't share the memories, nothing really has meaning. People cannot relate to your experiences because they haven't had them. So when the committee of elders asks him something, they don't really understand what he's talking about. They just have to accept his wisdom. And these people don't have a basis for making choices. The community prevents them from making mistakes, but it also from truly growing and changing. So yes, when people make choices, they might make wrong choices, but without that, are they really living? So the vocabulary, irrationally, if something's irrational, your choice is not based on logic. It would be more based on, emotion. Overwhelmed is when you feel like you are kind of drowning, and you can't deal with things. A corpse would be a dead body, like the elephant that was poached. Okay, they can't live without their tusks. Subsided is to set something aside. Something, is done with. It's subsided. It went away. So the pain subsided. You're now out of pain. Assimilated means something comes in to the culture, so it's something that was different and becomes a part of. And words with a different meaning. Small muscle control would be like using your hand muscles to manipulate objects like a baby does. They can't maybe write with a small pencil because they don't have the small muscle control. Geraniums are red flowers. Hall of Open Records is where they can go and find things out if they had the curiosity, but it seems like, you can do that, but no one really does. And landscape workers would be like gardeners who take care of the plants. Okay, 14. Jonas gets his first physically painful memory because he did get the elephant poaching, which was very painful. But in this one, he goes down the sled and breaks his leg. So he has to experience that in the memory. And then we find out on 109, his leg still aches horribly when he wakes up. He asked the giver, may I have relief of pain, please? He begged. The giver said no and looked away. So then he has to limp home and being pain, and mother says, or father says, you're quiet, do you need something? He can't talk about it. So now he's going through pain and cannot get relief. And then 2 says, what do he and the giver have, why, I'm going to change that to why do he and the giver have to hold the painful memories? Why can't the other people? And then they talk about this, and he says, the committee of elders, they don't want to hear about pain, they just seek the advice. And then they're talking about the pain, and then Jonas says, why can't everyone have the memories? If it was shared, it's not bad. And then the giver's like, they don't want that. Like, we have to hold the pain because they don't want it. And we just talked about that. Why can't everyone have the memories? What's wrong with Gabriel? Okay. The new child was growing. Father put in extra time with him. Okay, here's the problem. He remained fretful at night, whimpering often, needing frequent attention. So he still can't sleep through the night. And, we would assume, knowing what we know now, maybe he has like an acid reflux or, something that babies get that makes them not able to sleep. But for them, they're actually saying, Gabe might have to go away and get released because they can't sleep. So Jonas says, I'll take Gabriel for the night. He can sleep with me, and they're going to put the crib in Jonas's room. Okay. So then when that happens, Gabriel wakes up, and Jonas accidentally lets one of his memories slide into Gabe, a sail, and that actually helps Jonas go to sleep. Okay, and so that's actually the last question. How does Jonas comfort Gabriel? What does he think of that? And it really scares him that he's able to do that, because he's tried to give memories to other people. And then the twin question. Okay, so they're talking about twins. And then if they have twins, the father will have to select the one to be nurtured and the one to be released. It's usually not hard, though, because usually it's just a matter of birth weight. We release the smaller of the two. Okay, so one's got to go and one can stay. Okay, so those are the questions for 14 and the journal activity. The prompt is, Jonas experiences true pain for the first time. And I think it would seem a little easier if the memories were shared. You and I wouldn't have to bear so much by ourselves if everybody took a part. What aspects of being the receiver make for a very lonely life? How can you predict that Gabriel will be important to Jonas? So only the receiver can experience the pain, and this gives them wisdom, but they're very alone and burdened. And Gabriel is the only person that Jonas can share his memories with aside from the giver. So Jonas had tried to give color to Asher, and he tried to give the elephant memory to Lily, but really Gabriel's the only person who is able to get the memory. So, and Jonas kind of felt it slide into Gabe, this memory. So we would assume that that's going to be more important in the future. Okay, so that's it for chapter 14, 12, 13, 14. I hope